So we are blessing the children this Easter morning here at UUCA. And I'd like to add to Taryn's wonderful reflections on what that can mean for us by taking a deep dive into the inspiration for our blessing ritual today, a story from the Christian scriptures, the Gospel of Mark. One day, some parents brought their children to Jesus so he could touch them and bless them. But the disciples scolded the parents for bringing the kids, for bothering Jesus. When Jesus saw what was happening, he was angry with his disciples. He said to them, "Let the children come, do not stop them, for the kingdom of God belongs to those who are like these children. I tell you, anyone who does not receive the kingdom of God like a child will never enter it." Then he took the children in his arms and placed his hands on their heads, and he blessed them. That's the story. Now, as we dive deep into its meaning for us today, know that we bring to it a long tradition of Unitarian Universalist biblical scholarship that acknowledges the importance of historical context. It is so easy to apply Bible insights to our day recklessly, overlaying present meanings onto the past. We read into the Bible our contemporary understandings, our own standards, and absolutely our own agendas, and that's how the Bible voice is squelched. It wants to say a word to us, but we just talk all over it, so we cannot hear that word. So we want to understand the Bible on its own terms. Let it speak in all its power and all its strangeness. Perhaps the strangest part of this story is how the disciples scold the parents for wanting to bring something that, to us today, might seem quaintly equivalent to thoughts and prayers, right? A blessing. You know, as in children dying by gunfire and politicians tweeting their thoughts and prayers, but then doing nothing practical about it. It's just a blessing, after all. So the key interpretive question boils down to how people in Jesus' time would have understood this ritual of blessing. They see the ritual happening, and what cultural understandings get triggered, what memories get triggered. 2,000 years ago, if you were a descendant of Abraham and you belonged to the people of the book, an old story would have come to mind. The story of Joseph and his two sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, born to him in the land of Egypt. Their mother was not Hebrew, however. The mother was Asenath, daughter of Potiphera, a priest of On. Therefore, when Joseph traveled to Canaan to meet his father Jacob, Joseph knew that Ephraim and Manasseh would be seen as outsiders, not eligible to live in Joseph's house, and definitely not eligible to receive any of the family's wealth, any of the family's inheritance. This was the way it was. The bloodlines needed to stay pure. Joseph went to his father's house, all the way from Egypt to Canaan, understanding this. But what happens next, as the story is told in Genesis chapter 48, is that Jacob says to his son Joseph, "Now then, your two sons born to you in the land of Egypt will be reckoned as mine. Ephraim and Manasseh will be mine." Then Jacob says, "Bring them to me so that I may bless them." Jacob literally adopts them. And when that happens, everything changes. This is no mere thoughts and prayers gesture. With this blessing came a commitment to care for these children and to offer up whatever material resources could be mustered for that slice of time and for the rest of their lives. And so fast forward a couple thousand years to Jesus' time. That was what was on the minds of his disciples. And so was the attitude of that time, same as now, that children are the weakest link in the social chain, then as now. So if you want to join yourself with anyone, and you have any worldly wisdom at all, join with the capable. Join with the self-sufficient. Join with the wealthy. Join with the gifted. Join with the respected. Join with whatever was comparable to the NRA 2,000 years ago. Right? Join with them. Don't bring Jesus the weak. Bring Jesus the mighty. The disciples' irritation was only increased by the fact, as some scholarship says, that the children brought to Jesus were really being thrown out of their houses. They're being thrown out of their homes. The parents didn't want them anymore. They were weakest. They were weaker than the weakest link. Kids who might have been born of unlawful unions, children with mixed race heritage, children born of rape, or children who are physically disabled in some way, blind, mute, deaf, with only one eye or arm, mentally disabled children too, although back then it probably would have been considered a case of demon possession. That's the children who were being brought to Jesus. And the disciples were going to have none of it. How do you build a kingdom? How do you build a kingdom like that? What happens to a kingdom when the inheritors are that? Jesus, you got to be more ambitious than that, right? But Jesus' wisdom was different from the worldly wisdom of his disciples. His kingdom was never about conquest. It was about expanding the circle of love until all can belong in all their vulnerability and all their wholeness. It is about beloved community. It is about transformed hearts that love what is good. It's about that little voice too. Sound of a growing congregation. Jesus also knew that children are the most vulnerable and yet paradoxically the most powerful too. Children are the future. That is not a mere trite sort of thing to say. Cliche. It's true. Jesus knew something that Mahatma Gandhi, closer to our time, has said very well. If we are to teach real peace in this world, and if we are to carry on a real war against war, we shall have to begin with the children. And if they will grow up in their natural innocence, we won't have to struggle. We won't have to pass fruitless, idle resolutions, but we shall go from love to love and justice to justice until at last all corners of our world are covered with that peace and that love for which consciously or unconsciously the whole world is hungering. The kingdom of God, or beloved community, begins with the children of all kinds, the wanted and the unwanted. We cannot make their invitation to the dignity table an afterthought. We must not put them last on the list. Jesus chides his disciples and he blesses those unwanted children, those lowest of the low. It means that he will commit to caring for these children with whatever material resources he has. Loving words, yes, but more than words. It means that if Jesus were alive today, he would work to demilitarize the police so that instances of shooting people before asking any questions would disappear. This happened recently to a young father, a young black father of two named Stephon Clark. Lift up that name, Stephon Clark, who was shot 20 times and killed while in his grandmother's backyard because police thought he was pointing a gun at him. It was not a gun. It was a cell phone. And he was scared out of his mind. Stephon Clark was someone's child, and now he is dead. We need to bless Stephon Clark. We need to commit. He is part of our family. We got to love him. Amen. Same with the children afraid to go to school. They hear an alarm go off, and it's just a drill, but they immediately think that there is a gunman loose in that building and that they are going to die. It is just horrible. Bless all the children. Meaning, talk to your legislators, meaning vote this November. Bless the children. You know, it does not have to be about crisis or tragedy, trauma. The children of this community who are going to find your plastic egg with your blessing inside are beautiful with their innocence and their curiosity and their openness and their playfulness. How can we put them, how can we do that? How can we put them first on our list, not in the middle, not in the last? How can we do that? I'm going to start leading children's chapel once a month. It's always going to be on a Sunday. I am preaching. I'm going to miss the first 15 minutes. of the worship service, you're going to see me coming through the cry room. I'm going to be slinking down the steps. You're going to be wondering if I slept a little too late that morning. I'm going to do that. What can you do to share the wealth of your time and wisdom with our children? Bless the children. More than 450 years ago, it was Faustus Socinus, our Unitarian Universalist ancestor, who said that though Jesus was only human, still he saves. But he saves not by the virtue of his blood spilled through some violent death, but by setting an example of a truly loving, good life. People are saved as they follow this example of Jesus' goodness in their own lives. That's how they're saved. Let's follow Jesus. Let's be saved from our selfishness and saved from his disciples' so-called wisdom. Let us be saved. This is how spring will go from being something that happens outside of us and it instead happens in our hearts. That's how spring happens in our hearts and in our souls. That's how that happens. Happy Easter to you.
Our next song is a beautiful Muslim song. We bring a Muslim song to our Easter service. The translation is, I follow the religion of love wherever love is found, for love is my religion and my faith. As we sing